GameSci.com. GameSci.com.
Let's see where binary really affects our computer programs. Let's talk about compiled machine code. Some computer languages are compiled. C and C++ are examples of compiled computer languages. Now, what does that mean, compiled? Well, compiled means we're going to take this code that we wrote. This is code in C and C++. We're going to take this code and convert it over to game.exe, or an executable files. We're going to convert it over before we ever run the program to ones and zeros. That exe is short for executable. In a Windows operating system environment, the exe extension says this code is converted to binary ones and zeros. Now at that point, we don't even need the original source code. The code we typed in has already been converted over to an executable file. We don't need the code that we typed in. What we need now is this executable file, this exe file in Windows. As an executable file, it's binary ones and zeros. I want to make something perfectly clear. The computer does not execute the code we type in. The computers only understand ones and zeros. This code gets converted to this code, machine code or machine language. And it's this code, the ones and zeros, that the CPU executes. A compiled language simply does this conversion before you run the program. So now it's in executable memory. I can say run this program. So what's going to happen is the executable program is going to be taken from RAM memory, loaded into the CPU, and executed. When it's done executing that command, it'll go to the next binary command or the next machine code instruction in memory, load that into the CPU, and execute it. Then it'll go to the next set of ones and zeros in memory, load that into the CPU, and execute it. Let's make this perfectly clear. Executing programs are called machine code or machine language, and they're the binary ones and zeros that the CPU executes. Compiled languages convert to this machine language before you ever run the program. Now let's look at what's called interpreted code. Examples of interpreted programming languages are JavaScript and PHP. An interpreted language is very different than a compiled language. And it has to do with when the ones and zeros are created. So here is an example of JavaScript. You can see that languages are pretty consistent across. An if-else statement is going to look like an if-else statement in between many different languages. The code is required in order to run an interpreted language. You've got to have this source code in order to run the program. What happens in an interpreted language is the executable is created on the fly while you're trying to run the program. The interpreter will read the first line of code, if damage is greater than 5, convert it over to binary machine code, and then send it off to the CPU to execute. When it's done with that, it'll go to the next line of code, health equals health minus 3, convert it to binary machine code, then send it off to the CPU for execution. It'll come back to the program, convert the program to binary machine code. When it's converted to binary machine code, it'll send it off to the CPU and execute that code. See the difference between compiled and interpreted? Compiled pre-builds all the machine code. Interpreted creates it while the program's running on the fly.
GameSci.com.